All right, everybody, welcome back. Real World Retirement, the podcast. I am your host, Alexander Pushman, and I just want to welcome you back. I'm really excited today. We have a phenomenal topic, chasing shadows in retirement. Now, really quick, let me unpack what our goal today is. When I say chasing shadows in retirement, what the heck am I talking about? The rules that were 10, 20, 30 years ago for retirement may not work today. And there's a lot of generalized rules and best practices, so to speak, that people follow when they get into retirement that necessarily may or may not work for you today. It's a different world we're in today. So one of the things that we're going to be doing is I have a phenomenal guest, Nick Calvaneso, one of our senior advisors with the firm Foguth Financial Group. And he's going to be unpacking. We're going to go through 3 different topics. We're going to talk about Social Security and income planning. Then we're going to talk about investments, and then we're going to talk about tax planning and legacy. And we're really going to unpack some of these, again, generalized rules that may or may not work and poke some holes in these, okay? So I always like to start, Nick, number one, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I'm excited what we're going to get into today. And I know Nick's got some good stuff. A veteran in the business, has been working with families across the country for a long, long time. And absolute wealth of knowledge. So again, thank you for taking time out of your schedule. Absolutely. So Nick, if you don't mind, I always like to start with, what got you into the business? Why do you love doing what you do? Kind of give the folks the story of Nick Calvaneso.
Of course, yeah. So when I first started in the financial services business, I wasn't working with families at that point in time. I was actually working with advisors all over the country. And what I did was I helped those advisors put their plans together for the families that they were working with, that they were serving. And this is all aspects of retirement planning. So hitting all points of Social Security planning, income planning, tax planning, estate planning. Of course, the investments were a major role in there, but all aspects of retirement planning and combining them all together. So I was doing this with advisors all over the country. And in doing that, you see a lot of different things. You see a lot of different problems that people have. And when I would help develop these plans for these families, I would see where a lot of people just follow the trends. A lot of people do what they're told to do or what someone else is doing because it feels comfortable. So, and that's what led us to this topic today is what could we possibly be doing that we're just told to do, told it's the right thing to do, but if we take a step back and think about it and have a plan that we know really works for us, is it really the right thing?
Right. We were talking before we started recording, and one of the things you said to me that I think is just a great thing for people to think about. It's like that old saying when you're a kid, right? Well, if they jumped off a bridge, would you too, right?
Right.
And the reality is we see that happen all the time in the industry. And you rattled off 4 or 5 examples that I can't wait to dive into with the folks out here. But there's so many things that folks are doing that they just thought, oh, well, that's just what you're supposed to do.
Right.
But matter of fact, they haven't verified, keyword verified, if it's the right thing for them.
Absolutely. One example, if we're talking about income planning, how about a Social Security plan?
Yeah. So let's jump into that. Income, Social Security. Wherever you're going, let's jump in because I think that's the best starting place because that's where it all begins.
And it does. And you'll see a common trend. It always goes back to having a plan, but having a plan that's catered to you. But my plan's not your plan. Your plan's not going to be my plan. And the same goes for families out there. So when I sit down with someone and we start talking about Social Security, 90+% of the time I hear someone say, well, I'm going to take my benefits at full retirement age. And my first question to that is why? And more often than not, there's no answer to it.
Well, my coworker told me to.
Right. Or my neighbor said full retirement age is when I get the most benefit.
100% of your benefit, right?
You get 100% of your benefit. But who tells us what full retirement age is?
Right.
What's the difference between collecting benefits at full retirement age or 3 months before full retirement age? So it goes down to have a plan that fits for your goals and your objectives.
Right.
Because you don't start with, I'm taking Social Security at 67. Why would you ever start there without knowing what do I want my life to look like first? and then fit everything else into it.
You're putting the cart before the horse.
Right.
Right. And you're making decisions without verifying the root or foundation of a plan. Really quickly, because I know you're an expert in this stuff. What is and you used an example a second ago. Hey, your full retirement age is 67, right? And you're 6 months prior to hitting that age. And you're like, well, I got to work 6 more months to claim my Social Security, right? Will you walk people through actually the raise they get? Because people oftentimes think they're getting an annual raise on Social Security. And I know you know this like the back of your hand. Will you unpack that?
Yeah. And this is so important because think about this. If you were playing a sport when you were younger, you need to know the rules to play that game.
Amen.
Same goes for this with Social Security. So know the rules. If you think about Social Security and let's say your full retirement age is age 67, what's the difference in taking it between 67 and 62? Well, being in this business, I know it's a 30% decrease in the benefit. Break that down by 5 years. Every year is a 6% decrease in your benefit by full retirement age. You can break that down to the month. 12 months in the year, 6%. It's a 0.5% per month by taking it sooner. So when you're talking about Social Security planning and when should I take my benefits, think about and do the math. What will I receive if I elect my benefits at this age? And then back that in, is that going to be enough in conjunction with all other aspects of the plan, whether it's distribution from other retirement assets or cash that you might have on hand, how it's going to be taxed. But if that's enough for you to do all the things that you want to do and have a successful retirement, why are you delaying until 67?
Right. The why, I love that, because to your point, if you ask somebody that, 99% of the time their answer is going to be, well, that's what I was told I should do. They don't know why. They don't understand why. They're just doing what they believe. And what's crazy to me too, and again, you've told me dozens of stories around this topic, all the folks out there who say, well, I can't retire until I hit full retirement age.
Right.
And then you sit down with somebody, run an income plan, verify the information, be like, actually, you can retire today, right?
Yep.
Per the math. So I think that's a really powerful message. And this is one thing I'd like to just encourage any listeners, anybody, watching the podcast. If you're sitting out there today, and again, retirement's a scary thing to think about because you have the emotional, you have the mental, and then you got the financial piece. Absolutely. And everybody's worried about the financial and they don't really consider these other two, but I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. Yep. But if you're out there listening today and you're thinking to yourself, well, I don't really know if that is truly in my best interest, whether it's Social Security, how much money you're going to spend a month, what are the investment ratios you're using between risk and safe? Are you using bonds? Is that the best thing? Are you using target funds? Is that the best thing? If you're just following generalized rules, I need $1 million to retire. I want to encourage you, engage with us, reach out. Of course, I want everybody to follow, and I hope you're getting some good stuff out of this podcast. We love it. We enjoy doing the education side. However, if you're sitting out there and you're one of these folks, I want to encourage you, drop us a line, send us a message, send us an email. I'll tee you up with Nick, and Nick can answer any of the questions you have unique to your certain situation, because that is what we're talking about. You can't generalize this stuff. No. And it's so important you understand what fits for you, your family, your goals, your concerns, your situation. So please, if that's you, reach out to us, engage with us. You can send us a message. You can call the office. You can send an email, nick@foguthfinancial.com, right? But we're here for you if you need. So I just want to make sure I'm putting that out there to the community. So one thing I also want to jump in, when we start talking about Social Security and income planning, number one, Social Security timing is a very generalized rule. I'm just going to wait till 67, or hey, I'm just doing it at 62, right? Whatever the answer is, that necessarily isn't the right answer. There's actually a process that you go through to verify it. What are some other income planning or Social Security mistakes of kind of that chasing shadows concept of something that may have worked in the past and that was a generalized rule but doesn't necessarily fit with somebody today? Any other topics or specific claiming recommendations that you've identified as a generalized error that people make?
Absolutely. It pertains to taxes. If we're going to make a determination that we're going to take our Social Security benefits, do you think it would be important to understand how we're going to pay taxes on those benefits?
Great point.
And the answer to that question is not just what is my benefit, how old am I married? Those are all factors in there. But the answer to that question also comes from, what are we using to supplement Social Security to achieve the end goal? The end goal is always that we have a successful retirement. We're able to do all the things that we want to do while retired, spend time with our family. But how could we ever make an informed decision on one aspect of that retirement plan without understanding all the other aspects of the big picture?
Absolutely.
So when I hear I'm taking Social Security at full retirement age, and the reason that we keep talking about this is because I hear it all too often. And when I do, like I said, my response is, why? Have you thought about your tax plan in conjunction with that? And this all leads into all aspects of planning, your estate plan as well. And we'll get into that. I know we will. But why are we doing the things that we do? And think about the decision-making process behind it. Why are we comfortable with the belief or the determination or coming to the solution that we're going to take benefits at 67? Why are we comfortable? And are we comfortable because it's what everyone else is doing? Or are we comfortable doing that because we've done the research, we've had a professional guide us down that path of having a real plan, and now we have the clarity to know that we're making the right decision? Is it better to make the decision because everyone else is doing it? Or is it better to make a decision because we've done the work to get clarity that is the best answer for our question?
Right. And I think of, like, to your tax point, one of the ones that comes up often that I hear is like, hey, I'm going to have this part-time job, right? I don't want to just go cold turkey on work. I still want to have a social environment, right? I still want to get out of the house, have somewhat of a routine. To your tax point, okay, well, if you pick up a part-time job, let's just say you're retiring, and I'm making it up. You're retiring and you're going to pick up this part-time job, and that job is going to pay you $36,000 a year, okay? Is it actually in your best interest to turn on Social Security in conjunction with that, considering, okay, now how much of your Social Security is taxable, right? A. B, if you're making over a certain amount and you claim before 67, you might have just shot yourself in the foot, right?
Yep.
There's a bag of rules around that. So understanding the tax implications, because, I always joke around. I say, hey, raise your hand if you like talking about taxes. And every time there's one human being in the room and they're a CPA, right? But my point being is the tax conjunction is a super important factor. And the unfortunate reality is it's super complicated.
It is. And even further on that, and I'll talk about that too. I'll say, hey, I'm glad everyone's here to talk about the most entertaining topic we could possibly pick in the world. And you decided to come here on your own accord, right?
Right.
To talk about taxes. You made that decision to talk about taxes, right?
God bless you.
Yeah. But we know why there's someone's there.
Right.
Because they know there are things that they could be doing unintentionally.
Right.
That could not just impact their lives or their spouse's lives, but their kids' lives or their grandchildren's lives for years to come. So it's almost, they know there's more out there.
Yeah.
But commonly, it's where do I go to get the information? And accurate information.
Yeah, and kind of wrapping up the income Social Security piece, one more that I know you have dealt with more than most, but that theory, and this is one of those old theories, the chasing shadows, stuff that everybody thinks is true from 20, 30 years ago that not necessarily in our experience is true. I only need 70%. I only need 80% of the income I have now in retirement. People thinking that they're going to spend less. We kind of dive into that a little bit. What have you observed?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm yet to find someone that wants to spend less money than when they retire. Because the old joke is when you retire, you now have 6 Saturdays and 1 Sunday.
Right.
What days of the week do you spend the most time at Home Depot? I know because I don't just go to Home Depot one time on a weekend. My wife yells at me every time, where are you going again? I'm going to Home Depot. Weren't you just there? Yeah, I was just there. But every time, break out that credit card, you're spending more money. And it just so happens to happen on Saturday.
Right.
So you might think you're going to spend less, and maybe you got a lot of those checklists done. But I tend to find that checklist just grows when we retire because we get more time.
The honey to-do list.
That's right.
That becomes the job. And also, just to add a little bit more light and context to that one, the other thing you got to think about when you're retiring is, and I know we've talked about this before in the podcast and prior episodes, but you retire and usually you have more time, right? However, with that more time, you spend more because, to your point, there's 6 Saturdays and 1 Sunday.
Right.
The other side of that coin is, unless you have a very specific reason, hey, my mortgage is paid off now this year. Okay, well, that's a legit mathematical minimization of how much you're going to spend a month. You know, okay, my mortgage was $2,000. I just paid it off. Okay, well, that is a legitimate case you spend more.
Yes.
But what we've also identified, and again, I know you know this to be true, and you were talking to me about it a minute ago, is the concept that in the first 2 to 5 years, people usually spend more than they anticipate. The travel, the upgrades to the house, right? That honey to-do list.
Everything.
You're doing some things that you probably didn't do. You're probably spending some money you didn't spend because you have the time and you're enjoying your retirement.
And who do you really want to spend that time with?
Right.
Family.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to go travel? Of course we want to travel with our spouses, but when we retire, it changes the perspective of the way we look at things. Because anybody watch the Rocky movies out there? Rocky said this, and time is the undisputed heavyweight champion. And that's true. And in your first years of retirement, you're probably more mobile than you're going to be in the next 15 years after that.
Right.
So when do you want to do more? When you can't do as much, or do you want to do more now? But really, all of this ties back to the one common denominator is understand what you want to do when you do retire and build a plan for success to do all those things.
Amen to that. And it's about proactively, and I think there's this statistic, right? We're numbers guys. We can't help ourselves. Yeah. But there's this statistic, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I've lived by it.
It's true.
I hope so. But they basically will tell you, for every minute planned saves you 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? And if you think about that, what is more important than spending maybe 2.5, 3 hours of your life to get a second opinion on the most important financial decision you will make in your life? I can't think of a better way to sacrifice 2.5 hours of your life to verify and get the answers on, hey, am I going to run out of money? Do I have a tax problem? Right. Am I in the right or wrong investments? Am I taking Social Security at the right time? Right? Our RMD is going to be an issue.
Absolutely. And this goes back to one word. What does a plan give you? And it's one thing. It gives you clarity.
Yeah.
And clarity is the ultimate piece of a decision-making process. And if the decision is when can I retire, how much can I spend, if you have the clarity to know that you can do that, you're going to feel a lot more comfortable in your retirement. Because I've seen the other side of it too, where you have someone that retires and they hold back so much in the things they want to do. 10 years passes, they realize they didn't do all those things they wanted to do, and now they've got a bunch of numbers on a piece of paper that they're looking at. And for what? What was it for?
Right.
What did we accumulate this for? If we accumulated to look at it on a piece of paper, that's fine. But
there's more.
There's a lot more to it than that.
There's more to it.
We did it because we know there's going to come a point in time where we want to put work behind us and go into this transition to the next phase of life, and that should be enjoying all the things that you set out to enjoy.
It should be a celebration, right?
Absolutely.
It should be a celebration, but it doesn't mean that you should sacrifice, again, to your point, don't follow those rules that the water cooler talk, right? Hey, you need $1 million to retire. That one drives me crazy. I've talked about this before. I'll talk it again because I think it's that important. It's all about how much you spend a month.
It is.
If you spend $2,000 a month and you retired with $1 million, you're going to die with like $6 million, right? If you retire with $1 million and you spend $15,000 a month, you're going to run out of money in about 7 to 10 years. You can't use these generalized shadows from the past rules. And anybody who says otherwise, I would love to sit down with them and give them some real world education on what that looks like for families today. It's different.
And I'll always know very quickly whether someone does have a plan or not.
Yeah.
And I'll bring up a prime example of some recent things that have happened with the stock market.
Yeah. So, okay, perfect segue.
Is it good?
We're going 2. We're going bullet point 2 here. We're going to jump in to the investment piece, and there's some nuggets I know Nick has, so keep moving.
Yeah, so earlier this year, no surprise to anybody, the market had some trouble, didn't it?
Volatility.
Some volatility. I stepped back and said, good. And here's why. If 75% or 70% of the time the market's up, 30% of the time the market's down, and we want to have a 30-year retirement, isn't it reasonable to assume that we're going to have 9 or 10 years of retirement with a down market?
Right.
So we know it's going to happen. It is a lot easier to plan for something if we know something's going to happen before it happens.
Absolutely.
This is the one. Guess what? I'm a fortune teller now. I can predict the future. If you're retired for 30 years, I can undoubtedly tell you you are going to endure market corrections in retirement.
Right.
The question is, do you have a plan for when that happens?
Correct.
And is the plan, well, I'm going to skip my trip to Florida this year? That's not a good plan. So we know something's going to happen before it happens. What's the plan for where it does? And dive even further to that. When the market goes down, what can we do to take advantage of it?
Yeah.
Because, again, we know it's going to happen. So what are we doing when it does?
Right. And it makes me think of the quote from the undoubted king of investing, good old Warren Buffett.
Yes.
Right. Rule number 1 in retirement, specific to retirement. Warren Buffett, not Alex Pushman, not Nick Calvaneso. Warren Buffett. Rule number 1, don't lose money in retirement. Rule number 2, don't forget rule number 1. So the whole point to that is don't, because the rules change. And exactly what you're talking about, the rules change. In retirement, you're hypothetically supplementing your Social Security if you're lucky to have a pension as well.
Right.
Which is, what was the last number? I think it was like less than 5% of the population today still have a pension. It was something crazy. Anyway, so the whole concept, though, is how people get into trouble is Warren Buffett says that rule for one reason, the law of diminishing returns. If you have a market that's doing this and you are now taking out, call it $2,000 a month, what you don't know is you don't know if this correction or downturn is going to be 2 months or 2 years.
Correct.
And you don't want to be pulling $2,000 out in a constant down market, law of diminishing returns. Look it up. We're not making this stuff up. It exists for a reason. And so the concept is, don't lose money in retirement. It's not saying to take risk. It's saying to have diversification with your assets. In a down market, you want to have safe or protected investments that you would pull from, right?
Absolutely.
So that whole theory, chasing shadows, we're going to ride out the market.
Don't worry, it'll come back.
It'll come back. You don't care when you're working because you're
Right.
buying in low, right? Every 2 weeks,
That's
you're throwing
right.
money in, dollar cost averaging, it works.
right.
All of a sudden, you retire, now you're taking money out. The rules change. Now, we're not saying don't take risk. We're just saying have diversification.
Take it in the right places.
Right.
So
So
understand where you're taking risk and where you're not taking risk.
Yeah. So on that, investing wise,
Yeah.
what are some shadows? What are some generalized rules when it comes to diversification that you'd want to poke some holes in to help educate the community out there?
As crazy as it sounds, the one that so many people don't follow, and this is where I'll say the masses are right. What is it? Do they say buy low and sell high? Has anybody ever heard that before?
Yeah.
But what all too often do people do when the market's going down?
They sell.
They sell.
Yeah.
Based on, and is that based on any planning or is it based on something that's another retirement killer, is fear? And fear only comes from not having clarity. Going back to clarity again. And not having clarity is not having a plan. Because if you had a plan for when, we just said 30% of the time in your retirement, the market will have negative years based on history.
Right.
What's your plan for that 30% of retirement? Is it that I'm just not going to sleep those nights? Because that's a terrible plan if you ask me. Right. But if you have a plan and the market's going up, the market's going down, we already knew it was going to happen. We're just implementing what we already planned on doing during those times.
What's your take on bonds?
It depends.
Big picture. In retirement, what's your take on bonds in today's market versus 40 years ago?
It's a whole different world.
And why do you say that?
Interest rates go up, bond values go down. Interest rates go down, bond values go up. Right? That's pretty simple.
2022 would be a perfect example.
Right.
Everybody's like, wait a minute, I can lose 15% with my bonds?
Those, we feel so comfortable with just what we're given and what we're told is okay. And that's a quarterly statement and a pie chart. And we look at this pie chart and it's got, you got a little here in equities, you got some bonds, there's your safe money. But I look at that as the potential for a broken teeter-totter. You and I both have little kids, right?
Right.
Would you ever put your kid on a teeter-totter that might break?
No.
Would you set your daughter on one end and I'll set mine on the other? And there's a small percent chance that teeter-totter is going to break and they're going to fall down and they're going to hit the ground. They're going to come crying to us. Would you ever put your kids on that teeter-totter?
Yeah, you see a big crack in the middle of it?
It's like,
probably not.
Oh, it's okay. So why would we put our retirement on a broken teeter-totter?
And really what you're talking about is if you look at interest rates over the last 40 years, right, from 1984 or something like that,
right.
Interest rates went down for 40 years straight. And then all of a sudden 2022 comes around, the chickens come home to roost, they shoot up 6 times in 1 year, and everybody's like, wait a minute, what just happened?
That's right.
And everybody also needs to understand the Feds is not a government-run organization. So you have to understand the rules of this game.
The perfect storm, right? Mm-hmm. Inflation rising.
Yeah.
Right. Everything was happening where you had your, quote, safe money, your bond positions of that pie chart, they were losing value. Equities were losing value.
All the Ukraine stuff going on,
Everything was right. There are outside forces that can impact this. So all these things are happening, and here we are. We still need money to pay our bills.
Right.
And now, mind you, this is also in a high inflationary environment. So now those bills are not where they were the previous year. They're going up. The gas, electric, home and auto. I don't even want to go down that path right now. We'll save that for another day. But things are, costs are rising, grocery store bills. And now our retirement accounts are not doing what we want them to do in that environment. And again, it goes back because we didn't have a plan for that to happen.
Right. So, and basically where we're at is you're saying, okay, number one, we have to consider when we look at our investments in retirement to not quote unquote chase the shadows. We need to be considering a real diversified plan that is talking to our income and distribution needs. A. B. We need to consider our safe money. Are there alternatives?
Yes.
We don't want to go down that rabbit hole because this would go 3 hours for the record. But there's alternatives to bonds. If you're out there and you're somebody sitting here and you got a Target 2030 fund or a Target 2020 fund in your 401k, you're like, well, I'm going to retire soon, so I want to be less aggressive. Understand that 90% of your money is most likely in a bond, and if interest rates go up, it's not safe. There is interest rate risk. That is how bonds work. So if you're sitting out there and you say, Alex, Nick, I don't know what to do. All I've been taught is bonds. That's what my 401k offers. What can I do to diversify my safe positions? Please engage with us. That is one of the most common topics we have when people retire because people want to have that diversification. They want to have that peace of mind. And so engage, shoot us a message, give us a call. I'll tee you up with Nick directly, and he will educate you to understand, are bonds a good fit for that safe money? What other options do I have? And then once you understand those, 3, 4, 5 options that are really good, then you can make an educated decision for what works for you. And so I just want to encourage you, if you're out there listening, please do not hesitate. These are the questions we love to answer because they're softballs for us. This is our job. If I stepped into a job of a police officer, I would be lost, right? If I stepped in the job of a teacher, I would be lost. This is where we live. And so if that's you and you need somebody you can trust to get education from, that's our MO. It's kind of funny. We're talking about peace of mind a lot. As a company, our motto is peace and purpose for your money.
Absolutely.
And everything you're talking about, Nick, is like the nail in the head on why it's so important to have an organized plan. All right, that's a good one. Last topic, and we'll hit this one, is the taxes. So before we move on to taxes, investments, number one, understand your investments. Are they the right fit? Are you diversified? Do you have safety for a bad market, right? Are you leaning into the tools, and are you aware of all the tools? When you go to get that advice of your investments, make sure you're talking to somebody who does not have a limited menu of investment choices they can offer. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
Okay, so taxes, legacy. Now, I don't want this one to go too long because we could go down a rabbit hole. But what are some of the shadows, if you will, Nick, that you see of people, quote unquote, taking old information And again, may or may not work for them today. Generalized rules that you think you should poke some holes in, educate folks on.
This is a big one. When we talk about estate planning, tax planning, they really are combined and they really do work together. But think about where the public is, where they are for getting accurate information and advice on this. Because if you, and we'll talk taxes and estate planning, if you go to your advisor in most common situations and tell them that you want help on your taxes, they're going to send you to the person that files your taxes. Now you go to that person that files your taxes and say, hey, I want help with taxes on my retirement. They're going to send you to your advisor. And you're stuck in the middle wondering, well, who's really helping me here? Same with estate planning. You go to your advisor and you ask for help with estate planning, send you to the attorney. So you go to the attorney, and we'll talk about that in a minute. The attorney, I want help with the estate planning for my retirement accounts. They send you to your advisor. Alex, I'll ask you, how many times have you encountered a family that said, oh, I've got my estate planning done, and they pull out this book and they dust it off because it's been sitting in the drawer. And they said, I've got my estate planning done. I've got this book here. And that leads me to more questions. Well, what do you have and why do you have them? Because I hear all too often, and this may be true or might not be true, I'm good, I've got a trust. Well, do you have the durable power of attorney for financial and medical decisions? Do you have a will? Here's another one. How many people know what a will really is?
Yeah.
Does anybody know that a will is actually a letter to a probate judge? In itself, now, hopefully, when we're not here, we'll have our family members that will read that and say, this is what mom and dad wanted to have happen, and they'll adhere to our wishes. But if they don't, that letter goes to tell the judge what you wanted to have happen. So do you think it's better to understand the rules and know the rules of estate planning before you just go in and buy something? Because the answer to the question is, does everybody need a trust? I'll say it, not everybody does need a trust. Do some people need a trust? Yes. And whenever someone does have a trust, I ask them why. If they can't answer that question, then what do they buy it for?
Right. And there's probably a lack of education on the front end to help them understand that why. Because if somebody's doing their job appropriately, let's use an attorney for this example, they understand the situation, they educate them on their options, and then they help the family make an informed choice. It's exactly what we do with financial planning, income planning, all that other stuff. And so the key takeaway to that is basically the concept that understand your why and understand your options before you just start doing something. Oh, I heard I need a trust. Maybe, maybe not, right? A ladybird deed here in Michigan, right? For real estate. Important. Is that something that makes sense? Maybe, maybe not. The point being is that understand the why, understand the root of why you're doing what you're doing, and making sure you're getting the piece of the puzzle that solves that why.
A lot of problems here too. We're talking about the shadows. Oftentimes families will go and they'll get the estate plan done. They'll have a trust and they'll think they're done. And they'll put it in the drawer, and it gives them a sense of comfort that they have their estate plan done. But here's one of the problems. Do they have it done? Have they communicated with their advisor that they had it done? But I'll take it a step further, because when I talk to a family about estate planning, I want them to know what they're going to have happen before they go see the estate planning attorney. I'll have already communicated with the estate planning attorney about their situation. So there's a level of comfort going into that meeting with the estate planning attorney.
Absolutely.
When you already know what you need, and you already know your advisors had that conversation with them. And then even further on that, when your advisor works with your estate planning attorney. You'll get the best results for you and your family when your advisor and your estate planning attorney and your tax preparer are working together in sync. This should not be three separate islands trying to send a pigeon message to each other.
And the hardest thing is for the family, you're now having conversations you're not really an expert in, and you're the middleman.
Right.
And then you get in the situation where the CPA doesn't agree with the financial planner, right? And now they're saying conflicting situations which we've seen happen all too much. Because why? What's the root of that? To your point, the financial planner and the CPA didn't talk prior and or after the meeting where the family was involved. It's not your job as the family to be the middleman and having super complicated conversations that you're not an expert in. That's not fair to you. And the people who are asking you to do that, whether it be CPA or an attorney or a financial advisor, I'll say it like it is. They're lazy. They're lazy. They're not willing to have that extra conversation to help educate the other side of the fence to make sure everybody's in synergy. I love that. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. You're spot on.
And also, why do a lot of families avoid estate planning? Because it's a conversation that nobody wants to talk about. I don't want to talk about dying, do you?
Right.
So that's already a difficult conversation to have.
Right.
Then you have other barriers. Let's say I was referred to this estate planning attorney, and I'm going to call and set up an appointment. Well, do they charge by the hour? What if I don't mesh well with that person? Are they going to charge me for coming in? Am I going to just be sold something that I don't need? But I'm not saying that none of these things are needed. I'm saying go in with some education to that meeting, and you'll have a lot more enjoyable process.
Absolutely.
And what's the end result? I'll say it again. What is the end result of any plan or retirement plan, tax plan, estate plan? Is that you're going to achieve success based on your goals and your objectives. Now, the path there can go in all kinds of different directions. But what do they say? The quickest way from point A to point B is a straight line.
Right.
If we can be there to show you what that straight line is, you're not running off in other different places.
You're saving time.
We're going right to it.
Yeah, you're saving time, energy, and money.
And again, having the clarity and the understanding and the knowledge to know that you're making the right decision for you and your family.
So long story short on that one, understand the why. Why is it important that you have some form of a trust, will, power of attorney? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? What is your end goal? Because once you understand your end goal, then if you have the right people in your corner and the right team together, they can then educate you on what your options are so that you can make the best choice.
Absolutely.
When it comes to the estate and the taxes, candidly. Any other, shadows from the past that you would just want to bring up on this topic, that would be helpful.
Yeah, this is important. This is good. And think about this in your own lives. Let everyone around you know what you want to have happen before it happens. I'll give you an example. And you may have experienced this. I know a lot of families have. It can come down to the picture on mom and dad's wall that could break a family up. Tell me you haven't seen it happen, because I know you have.
Yeah.
What about mom's wedding ring? I have 3 little girls, and they all love sparkly things. Now, I want Heather to be around here forever, far longer than I am. But if something ever happens to Heather in the future, do you think all 3 of my girls are going to want mom's sparkly wedding ring?
Great point.
And if that conversation has not been had before it happens, could those 3 girls maybe have a different view on what should happen with that?
Especially if dad's not around.
Yeah, if dad's not there. Well, I can't tell you that they will. I can guarantee you that they will have a different opinion. So just if it's the smallest thing that we can do to change that outcome,
right,
let everybody know what you want to have happen before it happens. It can be the smallest thing in the world that you might think is not a big deal, but guess what? It can become a big deal.
Right. And I believe that Caleb and Katie also brought up some points exactly to that point of like, listen, one of the reasons people pay us to be financial advisors and to be experts and to help guide you and to help educate you and to help you make these really hard decisions that are complicated and probably more complicated than they need to be is the simple fact that we're not emotional.
Right.
People pay us to not be emotional. You're going to be emotional, and you should be emotional. It's your life savings, it's your family, it's your legacy, it's everything you've worked your whole life for. You should be emotional. But you're also paying somebody in your court to not be emotional, use past experiences of families we've worked with to help understand what does and doesn't work, and know all the options to lay out in front of you so that you can have that peace of mind knowing when you pass away, your wishes will be carried out and your kids don't hate each other.
And you talk about being emotional. I'm very emotional. But when it comes to families, I let them be emotional. I'm empathetic.
Right.
I understand what they're going through.
Absolutely.
And it's my job to understand the emotions that they're feeling and help guide them to the right decisions for them. And you brought up a great point about, if I know mom and dad, I want to know about your kids too. Because when you're not here, I'm going to be your best mouthpiece to let your kids know what you wanted to have happen. Hopefully everything is in place from an estate planning standpoint. We've gone through all that and executed these things. But without that, I'm there. I want to know about your kids and your grandkids and what you wanted to have happen. So when you're not here, I can speak on your behalf.
Absolutely. And it's even important. I know we've done this. I know you do it, and we've talked about this before, but we encourage our clients, the families we serve and work with, to, if they're comfortable with it, bring their kids in ahead of time, meet with all of us, sit at the table, say, hey, this is the game plan. Yeah. And sometimes families aren't comfortable having that conversation, them directly to their kids. It's hard. And so we oftentimes will take that load off their back and say, hey, listen, we're happy to do that. And again, that's just something that a financial advisor who has good experience should be encouraging you to think about, talk about, and plan and take action on to, again, educate your family on what your wishes are. So it's not the first time they hear it when you're not there.
And it's very rare that someone's going to tell us something or explain something to us that's going to surprise us or that we haven't heard before.
Right.
I mean, for them, this might be a big, outlandish situation and story, but I'll tell you, I've probably heard it before. I've probably experienced it before. So use our experience to help solve your problems or help provide you with solutions. I'll give you another one. This one's interesting. Blended families. Mm-hmm. Do you know how many times I've started working with a blended family and we get to the point of, all right, how would you like to set up those beneficiaries and have those funds structure and flow?
Let the fireworks begin.
And now they look at each other. They've never had that conversation. And now I know what's going on. Mm-hmm. I might just close the book and say, all right, we've got a different conversation to have now. And I'll help manage that conversation that might be not fun for them to have at the kitchen table at home, but I've done it before. I've done it many times. I can help guide you to what are some ways that I've seen other families do it successfully and overcome a very uncomfortable situation that you probably are avoiding at home. We can have it here. And to me, it's just common conversation.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree with you. So key takeaways from the legacy tax piece. And I know we didn't dive too deep into the tax other than the CPA and the communication piece, but number one, understand what you need and why you want it.
Absolutely.
Right. You got to understand the root of it. Is it a trust? Is it a will? Is it a ladybird deed? Is it simply, hey, I just got my beneficiaries and I'm good? That may be the case, right? Mm-hmm. But understand the why you're getting something and make sure you're not getting taken to the cleaners.
Right.
Then we get into the concept of, to your point, you got to have the hard conversations. And it's not a fun conversation, but you need to have it in advance so that not only you and your spouse are on the same page, whether it's a blended family or a 40-year marriage, but also making sure your kids understand that or those beneficiaries. So again, we can help prevent conflict, right?
Absolutely.
And educate yourself on the options, I think, is across the board on every topic.
I want to make another point before we close on this. By somebody not making a decision, even if they know it's in their best interest, because it's a hard decision to make, by not making that decision, you are making a decision. By not doing something that could be beneficial to yourself, your family, your loved ones, by not doing something that's in all their best interest because it's uncomfortable or I've never done it before. And a lot of this comes down to having clarity. But by not making that decision, you are making a decision. By saying, I'm okay. I'm just going to be okay with where I am. That's a decision. Whether it's just not the right decision, but you're still making a decision to stay where you are. And I'll say it again, sometimes the best decisions that we make in life are the most uncomfortable decisions that we have to make.
It's like not opening up that credit card bill, right? You get the credit card bill in the mail, and you're like, I don't want to see the number. I'm just not going to open it up. Bang, 26%, late fees, dang-a-dang. You know?
That's right, yeah.
So
one of the worst ones, it's spring break because you probably went on vacation, back to school because there's back to school shopping.
Right.
Summertime, the kids are at home. We're going to get that list of everything they want to do done, right? So
awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much. And I hope, again, I can't encourage, if you're out there listening and you felt some, let's just say discomfort, and that's you when we're talking about a certain subject, reach out to us. It doesn't cost you anything. We do complimentary reviews, second opinions, answer simple questions, do the whole enchilada from an income to an investment to tax planning. We will educate you as best as we possibly can. There's not a charge to that. That's one of the things we've committed as a firm, that we are happy to educate the community and the folks who are engaging with us. So if that's you, please reach out on Facebook or any social media channel, YouTube, come down to our website, give us a phone call. Hey, I'd love to talk to Nick Calvaneso about that podcast I just heard. There's some things that popped up. We're here for you. We want to support you. Thank you so much for joining us on Chasing Shadows in Retirement, Real World Retirement Podcast. Again, I am Alexander Pushman, your host. Nick, thank you for coming down today.
Thanks for having me. I had a great time.
And taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you're a tough guy to nail down. So thank you. And I appreciate it, man. And this was some good stuff. And thanks again for coming.
Thanks for having
Appreciate you, brother.
Always love you.
All right. Hey, we'll see you the next time. Engage with us. Follow us on social. If you're liking this stuff, come down to our Facebook page. Come down to our Instagram page. We got tons and tons of videos that we're putting out. We love doing this, and we hope you're enjoying the podcast. Join us next time, Real World Retirement. And again, I'm your host, Alex Pushman. Thanks for joining us.
Advisory services provided by Foguth Wealth Management LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. For additional information, visit advisorinfo.sec.gov and search 327434.